Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. I'm so excited about what I'm going to talk about today. I want to talk about these issues that I keep getting questions about across all my social media. We're going to talk about quarantine camps, COVID camps, as referred in some newscasts. Are they really real in New Zealand? Is that what's really happening in New Zealand? Are you guys really banning guns? Are people not allowed to have guns? Are you a communist country? Do you have socialism? Are you socialists? I'm going to answer some of those questions as an American living in New Zealand for the last 5 years, so stay tuned, subscribe below. Quarantine camps and limited freedom. This has been the message that Fox News has been broadcasting about New Zealand, and I'm getting so many messages about this and people concerned that I might be thrown into a quarantine camp. So I thought I would take a moment and just explain to you guys what's going on here in New Zealand. I'm an American who's lived in New Zealand for 5 years, so I understand both sides of the story pretty well. So I've been here for all of COVID-19 this year and have experienced it on the New Zealand side. But what I want to start with is number one, New Zealand doesn't have COVID. Like, we've eliminated it in this country. So we are functioning normally. Our kids are going to school, we're going to work, we can travel around the country, and it's a beautiful country. So if you're going to get stuck somewhere, it's a pretty great place to be. And so we are functioning normally. And so what we have is we have managed isolation for people that are coming into the country just to ensure that they don't have COVID-19. So when you come into our country, you have to quarantine in a very nice 4 or 5 star hotel for 14 days where all of your meals are provided. And then when you are done with your 14 days, you can leave once you've taken a test and we can verify that you don't have it. We were more relaxed about this and didn't have like actual hotels that we were working with, and it just, we were just hoping we could trust people, but we kept getting some community spread, and so then we had to go into various forms of lockdown in different cities. And so this is why, once we've gotten rid of it, how are we going to keep it out? And I think that if this was true in the US, if suddenly the US was completely COVID-free, I think you would feel also the same way about other people coming into your country with COVID and just making sure that they don't have it. So yeah, so you have to go into the managed isolation. Now, if you are a citizen or a resident here and you're coming back and you haven't been here through the whole COVID thing, the government pays for you to come here as long as you're staying here for more than 90 days, if you're intending to come here permanently or for the long term. But if I was to leave, say go to Australia or go back to the US and then come back, then I would also have to quarantine for 14 days, but then I would have to pay for that. And it's I think it's $3,000 for the first person, then it's $1,000 for the second person in your family, and it just gets less and less as it goes down. And so it's not cheap because they are nice hotels that they have everybody in, but that is the way that the country is keeping it out. And so there's no feeling here that any freedom is being stepped on. We all are on board with this. I think the only time I've seen New Zealanders get upset was when we let people in that decided to be careless about it and just spread the virus. And that is what everybody got upset about. So we don't feel like our freedom is getting stepped on because we think freedom of not having the virus is really great. Freedom to be able to do whatever we want is really great. We just can't travel internationally super easily, but that's okay because the whole world's in a pandemic and that's reasonable. So just wanted to get you guys an idea of what's actually going on here, that they aren't camps, that they are really nice, and that we are not feeling like our freedom are being, trampled on. If you know anything about New Zealand, it's community-based. People here actually care about the other people around them and keeping them safe. And so you won't see a New Zealander being like, oh, I don't want to wear a face mask, or I don't want to do this. And it's trampling on their freedoms. They're not going to feel that way. And this is why New Zealand has been able to get rid of COVID-19, because they handled it this way and everybody followed suit. In addition to the questions about COVID camps and quarantine camps, I get questions about the fact that we don't allow our citizens to have guns in New Zealand, and you're a communist country and socialism and that sort of thing, and all of this kind of thing is thrown around. And so I just wanted to clarify a couple of things for you. So yes, after the shootings in Christchurch a couple of years ago, they did ban semi-automatic military-style weapons and rifles, and that passed very easily here. People can still have guns, people can still get licenses. They've regulated that just a little bit more. So anytime you buy and sell a gun, you need to register it. So no, people can still own guns, they just can't have military-style weapons. And another thing is when you're in New Zealand, you don't really feel the need for a gun to be safe. The police don't walk around carrying guns in this country. They keep them locked in the glove compartment of their car, or in the trunk or the boot, depending on which country you're in. And yeah, so there isn't like the safety concerns that you feel in the US. So do you really feel like you would need to carry a gun in New Zealand? I think you'd have to come here and get a feel for the culture to really determine that, but I don't think that you would feel like you need to get a gun. And is New Zealand a communist country? No, it is not. It is a democratic company that's run like a parliamentary type government, and it's different than the U.S. because we are under the Queen, but we have our own prime minister, and so there's some differences obviously, but no, it is not a communist country, and we don't have a dictator sitting at the head of this country. And yeah, so it is not that feeling. It is not true. And then people talk about the socialism and our socialized healthcare and how horrible that is, and that's also not true. Like, we do have socialized, I guess you would say, healthcare, or healthcare that's available to everybody. Even if you are a resident visa holder, you have access to the healthcare here, which is really great. And so what that means is if you have any sort of injuries, even from work, we have something called ACC. I'm not going to get into all of that, but basically, if you have an injury, you can get all your healthcare is covered, and you get 70% of your wages paid to you while you are recuperating from that injury, whether it happened at work or not. And you also have the healthcare is amazing. Like, you can just go to the doctor and not feel like it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and you don't have to have insurance. And so you can have insurance. They do have private insurance companies. I do have insurance probably because I'm used to it. and so you can have both, but you don't have to. So like, if you can't afford insurance, doesn't mean you can't get proper health care here. And so you just go to your GP doctor for anything that you need, and then if they need to refer you to a specialist, that's all covered as well. And so yeah, it's really horrible, guys. It's horrible. It's not horrible. The horrible is the system that's in the US. In fact, that was probably my biggest gripe being in the US, and how much I had to pay for insurance for a family of 6 that I have, and then how nothing was covered, and I still had to pay for an enormous amount of money just in case the insurance companies didn't cover it. I'm telling you guys, it's not better. And I remember when I first got my first prescription here, they were like, where do I go to get the cheapest, option? Like, where's your Walmart type store? And they're like, no. Prescriptions are the same cost everywhere. They're like $10, $15. Sometimes they're free for your kids. I haven't even wrapped my head around all of it. You have free health care and dental for kids up until 18 years old. You do pay co-pays when you go to the doctor, like $30, $40, $50, depending on the situation. And there is talk about like you have to be on a waiting list for certain things because they have to prioritize things. But I haven't personally experienced that, so I can't really talk too much about that. But in terms of me having a healthy family of 6 and what I spent just on healthcare alone in the US compared to New Zealand, doesn't even compare. Like, it was a really enormous amount of money just to do regular checkups, just to do we had like some minor things, and then getting x-rays or MRIs were outrageous, and yeah, it wasn't great. And so the healthcare is a real problem in the US and needs to be fixed. And so that wouldn't be a negative to coming to New Zealand at all. In fact, it's really one of my favorite things, and it takes a lot of stress off of families, and families not going into debt because they have to pay medical bills, because that is one of the biggest debts in the US is people just trying to pay their medical bills, or people that just have, chronic illness or disease and they just can't even afford reasonable health care, or their drugs are so out of control in terms of price. So everything is very reasonable when you come to New Zealand. If you come and you visit New Zealand and something happens to you, it's all covered. You come in, I think you might pay a copay, but it's not the same in the US where, if you were a foreigner just visiting the US and you had an accident, it could cost you a lot of money, and that's difficult. And so I know when people travel from here to the US, they always have insurance because they know the difference in how they would or would not be taken care of. And so, so those are some tips to fill you in on what it's like living in New Zealand compared to the US. There aren't COVID camps. We aren't communists. We do have socialized, healthcare, but it's really great and a good solution. And we don't have a big population, but you can't tell me that the US can't come up with a better solution. And no, you can carry a gun. You just can't carry a semi-automatic weapon. But in all honesty, you wouldn't want to carry a gun in New Zealand.